Appreciate it. We'll now go over to Randy Seagraves, who's kind of our special guest for this webinar. He's an Extension Program Specialist at Texas A&M University AgriLife Extension, and also the JMG Curriculum Coordinator, which stands for, if you haven't seen it already, the Junior Master Gardener Curriculum. So Randy, I think you're on.
Joel, thank you, my friend. We appreciate you guys hosting and connecting this audience of teachers and directors and leaders and parents that are on this call. So Emily had my favorite quote so far from the session. You will get dirty and there will be bugs. and there's truth to that. One of the things that I have questions about a lot, and I love this question, especially from the parent side, and they ask how to get their preschooler involved, their toddler, and really even younger, some kind of just outside the baby standing up kind of stage involved in gardening efforts. And the first answer is just to do it with them, be outdoors with them. Let them see you in the garden space. Let them see you getting your hands dirty and making it a positive thing. I've had this happen twice about in the last 2 years. One was in an outdoor park space, and one was at a public garden we happened to be at. And both times we had parents that were small children, and they went to pick something up or touch something that was on the ground, and the answer was, "Don't touch that. That's dirty." So they were getting their hands dirty. They were picking up things. I think one was a pine cone. One kid picked up. But the whole notion of associating things in nature and things that are growing, that are part of the natural world, even things that are just on the ground, even soil, as being dirty, that's not the way you lead kids into having this love for the natural world and having value into the space around them. So you contrast that with, don't touch that, it's dirty, to having a child see their parent reaching into the soil and feeling the soil and say, "Come feel this," describing the texture. If the soil is warm, describing that, make it a sensory thing. Smelling it, talk about, "Oh, it smells so earthy." So the kids get to see the parent modeling those kinds of behaviors and having value for that. So that was off on a tangent there to begin with, but Emily, I appreciate you making that comment. You will get dirty, and if you're doing it right, you will get dirty for sure. So take me to the next slide, please. We're going to do a couple things here. I want to share some resources of things, teachers, that you might be able to send home for parents if you have those connections that are still in place. You are, teachers, our heroes. My wife is a second grade teacher, and she is in the process of adapting to trying to teach at a distance. Those kids are second graders. They're old enough for the parents to connect, and some are able to connect online through some sessions like Zoom sessions, that type of a thing. But the whole notion of keeping in touch. So my wife now is teaching, but she's also sending support materials for parents to be the teachers themselves. And so in some cases, there are copies of lessons that she has sent home to parents, which I think is great. And the parents, as you know, have a newfound value for the teachers, the job they do, the hard work that it is to do it effectively. So I want to do a quick nutshell overview of this new curriculum, the Early Childhood Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go curriculum that's coming your way, and then share with you a link to have some free downloads. And there will be some kind of previews that you can make available to your parents as well. So before we move to the next slide, though, to the left of that image of the new cover of the new curriculum that's coming this summer is a smaller cover of the elementary version, the preceding version of this curriculum. Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go is not just the name, it really is how the curriculum is organized. You see the sections that are divided into, in that one with the little tabs, there is a section on learning, and that's going to be some more formal activities and lessons that will happen indoors and outdoors. A grow section to give teachers resource on being effective and having a simple garden that can thrive and really have a lot of student involvement and leadership from at that age. The eat section is having some really incredible food exposures, and you would be surprised at how these kids are being able to taste some of these fresh and prepared vegetables for the very, very first time, and they find out that they love it because you develop this culture of tasting and trying new things. And the last section is the go activity, and it is working to have some featured activities that increase physical activity in students. So the multifaceted nature of this preceding curriculum was researched on a large scale. It was a USDA grant that in part was working to reduce obesity in children, but this now research-based curriculum goes a lot further than that. The idea that you can have these kids be impacted this way in this multifaceted way in the classroom and it spills over into the home is very, very real. So some of the good things that happened with this, and we were able to develop these in a very specific way for the early childhood audience, was this research study involving around 1,600 children. These were Title I campuses, so we're talking about some of the same audiences that we will often serve with this Head Start culture, this crowd, these families that we get to engage. There was an increase in these students being able to not only garden with their families at home, but these children were actually from these Title I homes able to show an increase of being able to shop for produce with their parents, for meal preparation with their parents, in addition to these gardening experiences. And so what's great about this is these are sometimes campuses that we didn't have very much carryover in these Title I campuses from the school to the home. And so having these kind of multifaceted ways that kids have buy-in and value for and are really energy ownership of in the classroom setting, it spills over to the home and impacts the entire family's healthfulness. So it's a cool thing we get to see carry over into these more impactful audience of these early childhood students. So click to the next slide for me, please, Joel. This is a 4-week curriculum. It is linear based, so really it kind of builds upon each other. You see that it's organized based on different parts of the plant. This curriculum is geared specifically towards this older age range of kid for our early childhood audience. This is specifically geared towards our 4 and 5-year-old age range. And there's a huge, vast difference, as you know, between a kid who is a 3-year-old who may be in one of your centers and a kid who is in the older range of a 5-year-old. And then jump into a couple grades ahead, like my wife teaches 2nd grade. And so much curriculum that we have come across and been exposed to had crazy ranges. And it would literally range from pre-K to 8th grade, and that is pretty wide. And so trying to have something very specifically that's catered towards and geared towards and developed to the age of kids and the teachers that are just masters at teaching at this age is really something that we want to be able to be as high impact as we could with a narrow range audience of children. So the plant part theme you see there, the weekly basis, there are some great garden connections and food exposures. There's going to be some center resources, some of these go activities, the brain and body boosting activities. But a foundation of what we really work hard to build throughout this entire curriculum is some effective and novel family engagement. You'll see at the bottom of the screen that each day there is a lesson and activity, and there's some cool literature connections. And I thought Emily made mention of this as well. Literature connections are so powerful. There's a featured song each week, and then we're also going to have kids, even a young age, have writing journals that are developed for kids that will help to complement their learning in the classroom. So next slide, please. One of the things, and I can't remember now if it was Sarah or Emily that made this point, was connecting the indoor and outdoor learning. So you can see one of the activities in week 1, the go activity, is having the students go outside and find a garden at home. Having them understand what kinds of needs at their age, what kind of needs a site has to be able to provide for to have a plant be able to grow, have a garden, and be able to thrive. Sarah, I know it was you that made mention of the container gardens. We're huge fans of container gardens because they are inexpensive, accessible ways for people, regardless of where they're at, to have gardening experiences. And you control soil, you control drainage. It's easier to be able to move these if you need to. One great thing, as a side note about those container gardens, is because there's a lip at the top, when kids go to water these plants, it channels the water down towards the root zone of the soil. So we love these because we think they're just the most successful, impactful way for kids to have these growing gardening experiences. Okay, next slide. There are 3 downloads we're going to share with you, and you'll see the titles of them there. These are actually the first 2 lessons that are part of the curriculum that we would invite teachers to forward home to your parents. And they could do this or some adapted version of this depending on what resources they have. You see the first one's called the Underground Root Table, and the second is Sunflower Seed Head. Next slide, and I'll show you what that page will look like. The Underground Root Table, you can use a piece of pegboard, a foam board, an Amazon box that comes in and pokes holes in it. There's different resources we've seen, from strings to pipe cleaners to strips of paper. But you see, ideally, if there are some of those pipe cleaners you have access to, those are great sculpture pieces that we use to talk about roots. And so you would have the parents and the kids working together to develop these plants out of pipe cleaners. And they can, as you see in the picture, on the lower left-hand side, the kids will crawl under the ground to be able to see and play with the roots. And some basics of different types of root systems. And they're not going to necessarily master some of this more sciencey vocabulary, but we like introducing a few of these types of terms throughout the curriculum. But a taproot is a long primary root that goes down, and these fibrous roots are sometimes shorter, going in many different directions. So the kids get a sense of the differences of those, and they get to touch and experience those underground. All right, next slide. We, in our fourth week, talk about fruits and flowers. And this book, when it's produced, is really one of those oversized curriculum. It's like a 11 by 10 inch page book. You know, it's one of those larger size. So these pages are actually images from the posters that are a part of the curriculum as well. So we'll introduce these because a lot of our kids that you're working with may not have seen sunflowers. And so we're going to show what those look like from a distance. And then the second image at the bottom is kind of up close. And then third, as that seed head matures, and you whisk away the tops of those little flowers and the seeds behind them remain, that's where the sunflower seeds come from. So next slide, and I'll share with you the activity. This is a cool fine motor thing, and this is one of those things that we'll do indoors, and it involves Play-Doh and paper and seeds. And it is pretty simple of the kids being able to emulate what they see in that picture. And you're going to get a big circle of Play-Doh. If you have access to some green Play-Doh, that's even better. Place it down on a paper plate and petal-shaped pieces of paper around that, and have the kids just insert those seeds one by one into the flower, the seed head. What was great, the teacher that we were working with in this activity is we're doing some videos of future teacher kind of training resources and some of the images that are here. The question was asked, well, what does the kid do after he or she fills up the seeds in the Play-Doh? And so as teachers, what would you think? Well, she said, well, then they take them all out one by one. And I thought that was a pretty good answer of the kids that we're working with, and they enjoy doing that. And it really is kind of beautiful, and it really does look a great deal like the real flower, the seed head that's growing. All right, next slide, please. The grow section of the curriculum, we'll skip ahead because we're short on our time today. It has some great resources for the teachers to be successful. So as I mentioned before, using those container gardens is a really easy, inexpensive way to have the kids have gardening experiences. But having the kids, even at the youngest age, be a part of every step. So as you can see there, in the week 1, they're going to select a location. In weeks 2 and 3, they're going to learn to plant the seeds. Weeks 4, they're going to put transplants in of vegetables that are flower or fruit producing that we eat, vegetables. And then the kids are in charge of taking care of it, of watering it throughout, and certainly the harvest at the end. Sarah made mention of cooperative extension, and I want to give a plug. If you have not already accessed some of the resources from your local cooperative extension office, or even heard who cooperative extension is, we are from Texas A&M University, and Texas A&M is the land-grant university, and so each state has its own land-grant university, has its own cooperative extension agency. But what is so powerful about the network is through our state's cooperative extension system, there are county extension offices in every county in our state, and it's the same thing in your state, regardless of where you're from. And one resource that you may be missing out on, if you're not already aware of it, there are likely some local resources in your county that can provide help towards you to be successful in your growing. So local resources, some counties have actually horticulturists, and their job is to help people be successful, whether they are parents at home or they are teachers working with schools and school garden programs that are trained, that are subject matter experts to help you be successful. And in addition to that, they have oftentimes banks of master gardener volunteers, and their job is to provide support for the public as well. So if you haven't taken advantage of that, I want you to reach out and try that. So I'll just do this kind of audibly. I think there may be a website at the end of this, but our web address is jmgkids.us. If you type in jmgkids.us/mycounty, it will prompt a resource that helps you find, you click on your state and find contact information for your local extension office. And one last thing that I do know that Sarah made mention of that we're huge fans of that's featured in this curriculum is using radishes. One thing that's really special about growing radishes is they are incredibly fast. Like Sarah said, they will germinate within a few days, and you can oftentimes go from planting a seed to having kids actually pull radishes up within a 4 or 5 week window of time. So going from planting seeds to harvesting and tasting within 4 or 5 weeks, that's pretty fantastic. Next slide, please. The next slide, we talk about some of the food exposures that are within this curriculum, and you see some of the skills that we're introducing, food safety related kinds of things, real cooking skills like you see stirring and cutting and even peeling. There's some great kid-friendly tools that we've come across as part of the curriculum, the features that kids can use and plug into some of those resources. So the food exposure is a big part of this. And we already know if they grow it, they're more likely to be able to eat it. And we've seen pretty significant transformation. So if you're doing any gardening at home, and even just outside appreciating plants, the fact that kids can connect those vegetables to plants that are growing near them, it just increases the value for them. And the same thing with this too, is having kids see parents enjoying and talking about and describing the foods they're eating that are healthful. That is one of the most impactful ways to influence the kids' diet. Next slide. A couple more things I'll share with you. This next section is one of the Go activities. This is a cool one called I Am a Growing Plant, and the kid becomes a seed, and the teacher, or now the parent at home who is a teacher, could have a kid ball up and be on the ground, and then turn the lights on in the room and spray the kid with a little water mister sprayer and have them start to grow. And one cool thing that's a great resource that is included within this curriculum, the way it's developed, is you see on the screen there, you see the lesson narrative. The text that's in black is in direction for the teacher, but really some of the color text in each section is some scripted content for teachers. So teachers could just use that as kind of prompts to kind of help them kind of move through. But some teachers actually like having the scripted format being part of it. So you kind of see how it's there. In that one, it's let's begin by curling your body up on the floor and pretend to be a seed. Seeds are tiny, so make yourself as small as you can. Those are some of the scripted content that's a part of the curriculum. So the Learn, Grow, Eat, and Go facets are part of this curriculum on a weekly and daily basis. So next slide, please. The next couple of images I'll share with you just real quickly is the value we have on parent engagement. So there are some resources that are there. I'll feature a couple of them here because we're short on time. We wanted to package as a part of this curriculum some social media resources, and you see some templates. There are some 7 newsletters coming home. These are templates that you'll insert photos of kids and kids' quotes and names into these stories that are pre-built, and there are ways for you to be able to send that home electronically or send hard copies home if you choose, as well as some social media resources. I'm not sure how many on the call are using any kind of social media to communicate with their parents. Some of our early surveys show that really, even though it may not be the primary way that people use for this survey, Facebook was one of the primary ways that our early childhood audiences and teachers and Head Start teachers were connecting to kids. So there's some resources that make that platform more effective, being able to reach those. And one more parent engagement I'll show you real quickly is we have each week some featured Learn With Me at Home activities. And Joel, I think it's on the next slide here. And there's a couple things. One of those comes home is some of the recipes that are featured each week. So in addition to some of the fresh food exposures they have, there's also some prepared recipes that will be shared. And the same thing at the bottom of these recipe cards that come home, there are some tips for parents and even some things that parents could use as talking points to have questions about the food they're eating and things they're learning in school. And then the other download that's coming is one of the Learn With Me at Home activities from week 1. We'll have a link for this download on that webpage we'll share with you in just a moment, is the Fun Food Face Project. And so as we're learning about different foods come from different parts of the plant, they're going to assemble an edible face that is something kids could be able to try to eat those too. But you see the same thing. I don't know if it's readable on your screen or not, but it also does the same thing we talked about at the beginning of the session of kind of modeling the parents enjoying these foods and describing these foods. That first tip is compliment your child's idea and creativity as he or she creates a face, and let your child see you eating and enjoying the plant parts. And so some of that is reiterated throughout the curriculum, having parents be the primary teachers. Okay, I think I have 1 or 2 more slides for us, Joel, so click the next one. Lastly, I'll show you a couple resources. There are some great centers that complement some of the learning that happens inside the classroom. You see there on the left. And on the right, we spend a lot of time with our teachers and our contributors and our reviewers to help make sure that this was a pretty complete curriculum. So the correlations to the ELOFs that are the last couple pages of the book shown on a weekly basis, it does a pretty thorough job of covering a lot of it, most of it. Not every single item is covered, but if you're using this resource, it certainly is going to be a complement to your garden learning in your classroom. All right, Joel, my last slide. And let me share the website for this. Yes, okay, here it is. So if you go to this web address, jmgkids.us/early childhood, there will be a place for you to download those 3 activities, those 2 lessons in that parent activity, Learn With Me at Home activity. And there's also a place if you're interested in learning about this curriculum. There's been some delays in production because of some COVID issues causing delays. So if you want to be notified when that becomes available, that would be a place to be able to sign up to get that information.
Thank you, Randy. Appreciate you joining us and sharing all the information. There's a lot of chat and excitement about the curriculum and resources available. So thank you so much.